Ici Londres.
The language in Europe has turned belligerent. People want retaliation against Donald Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminium. We're talking about getting into a trade war. But it's a rather poor metaphor. Think about it. In a real war, you blockade the enemy in order to make him poorer. But a tariff is a blockade against yourself. Who, after all, is the enemy here? What are we trying to stop coming in? Not guided missiles and armies and fleets, but the goods and services that wouldn't come to our countries unless people wanted to buy them. If you blockade the other country, it's in order to disrupt his supply lines. It's not in order to build up his industries. Now, you might say, yeah, well, that's all very good in theory, but what do you say to the industries that are struggling against cheaper competition, to the steel workers or aluminium workers in parts of the US? Well, we know what happens when a tariff favors one old industry at the expense of the wider economy. George Bush applied steel tariffs in 2002. 1 or 2 jobs were lost less slowly in the steel sector. 20,000 jobs were lost in downstream industries. Look at the maths. Depending on which measure we take, between 80,000 and 150,000 people work making steel in the US. 17 million are employed in industries which use steel, particularly construction, cars, and other manufacturing. And we know as a mathematical certainty that they will suffer more losses than any putative gains in the steel sector. It would be much cheaper simply to write a check to the steel workers not to turn up to work than to cost everybody else higher taxes, higher prices, and job losses. If the European Union were really clever, it would respond not by impoverishing its own people, not by penalizing its own consumers, but by removing its outstanding tariffs against the United States and indeed against the rest of the world. And then finally, Europe might begin to outgrow America. Sadly, there's no sign of that happening. We're locked in competitive stupidity.